On the night of May 2nd, 2026, a two-story yellow house at 4002 North Park Avenue in Indianapolis, Indiana, was decorated with banners, red carpets, and balloon arrangements. A Crispus Attucks High School senior was celebrating prom. Her mother, 38-year-old Brittany Marie Members, was at the front door. Hours early, we deliver clear, factual, and up-to-date true crime stories. Subscribe and turn on notifications to stay informed on the latest cases and investigations. On Sunday, May 3rd, 2026, at approximately 12:55 a.m., officers from the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, IMPD, responded to a call of a person shot at 4002 North Park Avenue on the near north side of Indianapolis, Indiana. 38-year-old Brittany Marie Members. She had been shot at point-blank range in the head while standing at the front door of the short-term rental home where her daughter's after-prom celebration was being held. She was transported to a local hospital by emergency services, where she was pronounced dead. Two additional victims, who had also been shot during the incident, walked themselves to Methodist Hospital shortly after, one in critical condition, one in stable condition. A fourth person was injured while attempting to flee the property. Neighboring homes. As of the time of this report, no arrests have been made. The investigation remains open and active under IMPD's Homicide Unit. Brittany Marie Members was 38 years old at the time of her death. She was a resident of Indianapolis, Indiana, and was, by all accounts from her family and those who knew her, a deeply present and protective mother. On the night she died, she was not a bystander caught in the wrong place at the wrong time in the traditional sense. She was there intentionally. She had helped organize and chaperone her daughter's after-prom party, had been at the venue earlier in the evening to drop off food, and had stationed herself at the front door of the property as the night wore on, specifically to control who entered the gathering. Brittany Marie Members was not Hollis Members' only child to die by gunfire. His other daughter, Sheena Grundy, died in 2016 as the result of a murder-suicide committed by a man she had been in a relationship with. Brittany and Sheena were half-sisters who shared the same mother. Brittany Members occasionally used the surname Grundy on social media, identifying herself as Brittany Grundy, an affiliation with the family name of her late half-sister and the Grundy family line more broadly. Her father was emphatic in his interview that she did not associate with the criminal elements of that family name, only with its personal lineage. Brittany Members had a daughter who was a senior at Crispus Attucks High School in Indianapolis at the time of the shooting. That daughter, whose name has not been publicly released out of respect for her privacy, given her status as a minor, was the reason for the entire gathering that night. It was her prom night, and her mother was there to celebrate it with her. The location of the party was a large, two-story yellow house located at the corner of 40th Street and North College Avenue, with an address of 4002 North Park Avenue. The property had been operating as a short-term rental since early 2025, owned by a firm based in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and booked through an agent in the Castleton area of Indianapolis. Neighbors in the area confirmed the house had not caused any documented problems before this night. The rental was booked for the occasion of an after-prom celebration for students from Crispus Attucks High School, a historically significant public school on the near northwest side of Indianapolis. Prom season at Crispus Attucks fell in early May 2026, and the after-party was a standard social event of the kind organized by families across the city every spring. By the time the party began on the evening of Saturday, May 2nd, continuing into the early hours of Sunday, May 3rd, the property had been extensively decorated for the occasion. A red carpet had been laid down in front of the garage. Banners and signage featuring Brittany's daughter's name and image were displayed prominently at the garage entrance, a common setup for after-prom events where arriving guests are photographed in a reception-style format. Balloon arrangements and prom-themed decorations were spread throughout the property. The grandfather described the atmosphere of the setup this way. The garage area served as a reception point where guests introduced themselves and took photographs, what he described as being like the movies. It was, by design, a festive and celebratory environment. Approximately 100 or more people attended the party throughout the evening. This included students who had just come from prom, former students who had graduated in prior years, and family members of the hosting family. Word had spread through the social circles connected to Crispus Attucks, and the attendance grew central to the post-shooting discussion around motive and targeting. Brittany's father, Hollis Members, had been at the party earlier that evening. He had dropped off food for the gathering and spoken with his daughter. Critically, he told reporters that he had advised her to shut the party down early, before the evening got too late, specifically to avoid the kind of trouble that can arise at large late-night gatherings. She did not take that advice. He left before the shooting occurred. At some point during the late-night hours, an SUV carrying multiple armed individuals made its way to the 4002 North Park Avenue address. Investigators and witnesses described the vehicle as containing a group, referred to in initial reporting as an SUV full of gunmen, who had come to the party with the apparent intent to gain entry. One neighbor captured footage on a Ring camera that showed a white car traveling down the street before gunfire broke out, and then reversing back up the street while gunfire continued. This footage was turned over to IMPD investigators and was among the physical evidence reviewed in the early days of the investigation. A separate neighbor, who asked to remain anonymous, described watching a white hatchback drive up the street and then back again before the shooting began, a behavior consistent with vehicles that are conducting surveillance or preparing for a coordinated action. According to the account relayed by Hollis Members from what he had been told by witnesses at the scene, the sequence of events at the front door was as follows. Brittany Members was stationed at the front door of the property, performing what was in effect a door security function, deciding who was permitted to enter and who was not. A group of individuals arrived at the door wearing ski masks. They attempted to gain entry to the party. Brittany told them they could not enter because she did not know them. One of the masked individuals responded to her refusal with a direct verbal question, and then, upon receiving confirmation that they were not being admitted, fired a shot at point-blank range into Brittany's head. Her father recounted it with the following words, which are the most precise factual account available in the public record of the moment of the shooting. I was told somebody came to that door with ski masks on and they tried to get in, and she said, "You can't get in. We don't know you. You can't come in." And he said, "So we can't come in," and fired a shot point blank to my baby's head. Brittany members collapsed at or near the doorway. Emergency services would later transport her to a hospital, but the wound was fatal. She was pronounced dead at the hospital. What followed the initial shot was not an isolated discharge. Multiple neighbors described hearing successive rounds of gunfire in what they characterized as 2 to 3 distinct volleys. The attack did not consist of a single shot and retreat. The assailants opened fire on the property in multiple waves. Neighbor Zach Thames told local reporters, "There were so many of them going off that I didn't register it as gunfire at first just because there were so many of them. But then you hear people start screaming and yelling out the window, and people kind of running around, hiding and stuff. And then there was a second, maybe even a third round of gunshots." A separate anonymous neighbor provided a complimentary account, describing watching the white car reverse back up the street with its lights off between volleys, consistent with the assailants' repositioning. They fired once, retreated slightly, and then fired again. Investigators from IMPD recovered approximately 80 to 100 shell casings at and around the scene. Some reporting put the number at approximately 80 casings, while other accounts cited figures approaching 100. The variance likely reflects ongoing evidence collection at the time of initial reporting. At least one neighbor reported hearing what she estimated to be more than 60 gunshots. The physical evidence strongly supports that multiple weapons were discharged, and not only by the assailants. Investigators determined that 3 volleys of gunfire occurred in total, 2 from the attacking group and 1 from people inside or at the house who returned fire. The impact of the attack on the physical environment was extensive. The front windows of the yellow house were shattered and riddled with bullet holes. Prom decorations remained visible against the backdrop of dozens of numbered evidence markers placed by crime scene technicians. Across the street, a stray bullet had entered the front window of a neighbor's home, passed through a couch, penetrated a wall, and come to rest at the back door. The neighbor whose home was struck noted that his son, who regularly fell asleep on that couch, had been awakened by him and sent upstairs approximately 45 minutes to an hour before the shooting. People inside the party scattered, fled into the street, and attempted to reach safety in surrounding houses and yards. One witness, identified only as Rachel, told reporters she had never heard automatic gunfire at such close proximity, and that her primary instinct was fear of being caught in the crossfire. Another anonymous neighbor described seeing teenagers running between houses and hiding in yards while sirens began arriving from multiple directions, including a police helicopter overhead. By the time IMPD officers arrived, Brittany members was on the ground outside the front of the property. 2 others had already made their way to Methodist Hospital under their own power after sustaining gunshot wounds. A 4th individual sustained injuries while attempting to exit the property during the shooting. Officers from IMPD responded to the 4000 block of North Park Avenue at approximately 12:55 a.m. on Sunday, May 3, 2026. The initial call was logged as a report of a person shot. On arrival, officers found a mass casualty scene: a deceased victim at the front of the property, multiple individuals with gunshot wounds, dozens of panicked partygoers, and a residential neighborhood in the immediate aftermath of sustained automatic gunfire. The scene was secured, and IMPD Homicide Unit detectives were assigned to the case. Crime scene technicians processed the property, recovered shell casings, documented bullet trajectories, collected security camera footage from neighboring properties, and began canvassing the area for witnesses. The lead detective assigned to the investigation was identified in media reports as Detective Christopher Winter of the IMPD Homicide Office. The public point of contact for tips in the case was listed as Detective Winter at 317-327-3475 or via email at christopher.winter@indy.gov. The physical evidence at the scene was substantial. Between 80 and 100 shell casings were recovered, representing ammunition discharged by multiple firearms. Bullet damage was documented on the front facade of the rental property, including shattered windows and exterior wall penetrations. A ring camera from a neighboring property captured footage of a white vehicle operating with its lights off during the shooting, including the vehicle reversing up the street between volleys of gunfire. The social media photograph posted hours before the shooting, showing 4 firearms being displayed openly at the party location, also became part of the investigative record. This image, posted publicly from Brittany members' Facebook account under the name Brittany Grundy, is relevant both to the question of whether the party's weapons made it a target and to the broader question of what information was visible to the public and to any potential attackers before the shooting began. One of the central challenges of the investigation, as described publicly by Hollis members, was the reluctance of witnesses to come forward. The party had been attended by upward of 100 people, many of whom were teenagers or young adults from the local community. Despite the large number of potential witnesses, the flow of information to investigators in the days following the shooting was described as insufficient. No one's coming forward with any information to help to solve the crimes. They can only go by the information that they have. But if someone comes forward and says, "Look, this person did this and this person did that," this would be a better city. IMPD Chief Tanya Terry, who commented publicly on the case in the days following the shooting, invoked the reality of what had happened in broader terms, noting that on the night of the shooting, there had been a parent at the door doing exactly what she and the department routinely called on parents to do: be present, be involved, and try to keep young people safe. That parent had been killed for it. Within 24 to 48 hours of the shooting, IMPD and the city of Indianapolis activated a response aimed at preventing retaliatory violence. The city's Office of Public Health and Safety deployed violence interrupters to the community, trained individuals whose role is to engage directly with those affected by shootings to reduce the likelihood of retaliatory acts. Deputy Public Safety Director Tony Lopez issued a public through the weeks following the May 3rd shooting. No arrests have been announced by IMPD in connection with the murder of Brittany Marie members. Crime Stoppers of Central Indiana published an appeal for tips with a cash reward for information leading to a felony arrest. With a dedicated tip line, at 317262 TIPS 8477. The investigation remained active under the IMPD Homicide Unit. Neighbors and community members who spoke to local media in the aftermath of the shooting consistently described the attack as appearing targeted rather than random. The assailants arrived in a vehicle at a spontaneous reaction to being turned away. One anonymous neighbor who witnessed part of the attack from across the street told Fox 59 the car was operating with its lights off during portions of the attack. Another neighbor described the car driving up and down the street in a pattern that suggested reconnaissance before the shooting commenced. Both behaviors are more consistent with a planned attack than with a spontaneous altercation. The most prominent theory circulating on social media and in the community in the days after the shooting was that the Grundy was, approximately a decade prior to the shooting, the leader of what authorities described as a murderous drug gang in Indianapolis. Richard Grundy is currently serving a federal prison sentence on a narcotics conviction. His own daughter died in an accidental shooting that occurred after he was incarcerated. Multiple individuals associated with the Grundy crew have since been killed, wounded, arrested, or imprisoned. Among the more recent incidents, an associate identified as Eric Butler, also known as Lil A, was shot at a tire store on the far east side of Indianapolis in the weeks around the time of the prom shooting. The connection between Brittany members and the Grundy name runs through her half-sister, Sheena Grundy, who died in 2006. He acknowledged that the speculation was widespread on social media, but stated clearly that the attack had nothing to do with the Grundy family and that Brittany, while she used the name on her Facebook profile, did not associate with the criminal elements connected to that name. He also acknowledged that Brittany identified with the Grundy name through her sister and noted that social media had drawn a connection based purely on the name, not on any demonstrated affiliation. He said, "A lot of people making speculations, talking about you hear on the streets, and you wonder what they are talking about. But then they come up with, this is retaliation. This is retaliation from the Grundys, because Brittany from her page using the name Grundy. Brittany Grundy. And that's it. And they think this has something to do with that, and it has nothing to do with that. This is something totally different." The phrase, "this is something totally different," is notable. Hollis members did not simply dismiss the motive question. He specifically redirected it. He did not say there was no motive or that it was random. He said the motive, if there was one, was something other than the Grundy family connection. What that something totally different is, he did not specify publicly, and investigators have not confirmed a motive as of the available public record. A separate theory, though not mutually exclusive with the Grundy angle, centers on the photograph posted to social media before the shooting. The image showed 4 firearms, including 2 semi-automatic rifles with extended magazines, being openly displayed at the party location. This image was visible to anyone who followed Brittany members' Facebook profile or had access to it. It is possible that the photograph served as either a provocation or a practical intelligence source, telling a potential attacker that the party contained armed individuals, possibly prompting a preemptive or retaliatory approach. It is equally possible that the photograph was seen as a show of force by one group directed at another, and that the masked individuals who arrived at the door were the direct response to that display. Investigators have not publicly stated which, if any, of these theories they are pursuing. The investigation remains open. The shooting had a significant and immediate impact on the residential neighborhood surrounding 4002 North Park Avenue. The area, described by at least one resident as a great neighborhood with great families, had not previously experienced the kind of violence that occurred on the night of May 2nd to 3rd. For many residents, the shooting represented a rupture, an event that made clear that no residential block, regardless of its character, is immune to the consequences of decisions made within a single property on a single night. Neighbor Zach Thames, one of the more frequently quoted community members in local coverage, summarized the reaction with a bluntness that cut through the standard language of commercial neighborhoods exposed to large gatherings with unknown attendees and no permanent host accountability. There needs to be some sort of more requirements, not even just from the city, but like from Airbnb itself, or even Vrbo, whatever, in terms of the process of making sure that the people who are renting these places and spaces out are doing some background checks. This is not a concern unique to Indianapolis. Large-scale shootings at short-term rental properties used for party events have occurred in multiple cities across the United States in recent years, and the regulatory response from both municipal governments and rental platforms has been inconsistent and largely reactive. Hollis members, in his interview, raised the issue of Indiana's permitless carry law, which, like similar legislation in Texas and other states, allows individuals aged 18 and older to carry a firearm in public without a license or permit. He drew a direct connection between this legal environment and the difficulty of controlling armed violence in Indianapolis. Everybody's carrying guns, Mr. McQuaid. There's no doubt about that. Some people, if they're 18 or 21, they get to carry a gun without a license. And this happened in Indianapolis like Dallas, Texas, where you carry a gun and you don't need a license, which you're killing, and here in Indianapolis, you're getting away with it. The photograph posted to social media hours before the shooting showed 3 individuals, partygoers, not invaders, openly carrying 4 firearms, 2 of them semi-automatic rifles with extended magazines, in a residential driveway before a gathering that included high school students. Whether or not any of those weapons were used in the subsequent shooting, the image illustrates the degree to which legal and illegal firearms are part of the social fabric of events like this one in a state with minimal carry restrictions. IMPD Chief Tanya Terry used the case to make a broader point about parental involvement, specifically noting that Brittany members had done exactly what law enforcement routinely urges parents to do. She had been present, she had been supervising, and she had been at the door actively screening who entered the gathering. The tragic irony was not lost in the chief's remarks. The department's public communications on the case balanced the appeal for witness cooperation with the deployment of violence interrupters and the public expression of concern about retaliation. The posture was one of active investigation, combined with community de-escalation. Among the various accounts that entered the public record following the shooting, the interview given by Hollis members to journalist Russ McQuaid stands as the most substantive single source on both the facts of the case and its human cost. it is worth examining in detail as a primary document. Hollis members gave the interview from his home on Indianapolis's East Side, days after his daughter's death. He had just returned from making funeral arrangements. He was dressed formally in a black pinstriped suit and open-collared white shirt. A man who had moved from the funeral home to a media interview because he believed speaking out was one of the few actions available to him. The interview covered several distinct areas. Members described, in the terms relayed to him by witnesses, the precise sequence of events at the front door. He detailed the arrival of masked individuals, Brittany's refusal of entry, and the execution-style shooting that followed. He was unambiguous about the nature of what occurred. His daughter was killed because she would not let strangers with ski masks into a party full of teenagers. Members acknowledged that this was the second daughter he had lost to gun violence. His other daughter, Sheena, had been killed in a murder-suicide in 2016. He stated plainly, "This is the second daughter I lost to gunfire. There's nothing like losing a kid. Makes you feel all hurt and pain." This context is relevant to understanding the weight of the case beyond the immediate crime. Hollis members is a man navigating a specific and compounding experience of loss, one that is, statistically and anecdotally, not unusual in American cities with high rates of gun violence, but that rarely receives sustained public attention. Members disclosed that he had personally been at the party earlier in the evening, had dropped off food, and had advised Brittany to shut the event down early to reduce the risk of trouble. He did not make this disclosure to shift responsibility onto his daughter. He made it as part of explaining the full picture of what happened, that the people who were there were not oblivious to the risks of a large, late-night gathering. They had discussed those risks and taken what precautions they could. Members was direct in calling on anyone with information to come forward and speak to investigators. He contextualized the lack of witness cooperation not as personal betrayal, but as a structural feature of life in high-violence urban environments, where the risks of speaking to police are perceived as real and the incentive to stay silent is strong. His appeal, however, was grounded in a clear-eyed reading of what investigation requires. Without witnesses, detectives can only work with the physical evidence they have. As detailed in the motive section above, Members was explicit that the attack was not related to Grundy family retaliation. He did not speculate publicly about what he believed the actual motive to be, other than to say it was something totally different. This restraint, whether it reflects genuine uncertainty, a desire to protect an ongoing investigation, or a decision not to make public accusations without evidence, leaves the motive question officially unresolved in the public record. As of the available public record, the following questions remain without confirmed answers. 1. Who were the attackers? The identity of the individuals who arrived at the property in ski masks remains unknown in the public record. IMPD has not announced any arrests or named any suspects. The ring camera footage and physical evidence at the scene are in investigators' possession, but no public identification has been made. 2. What was the motive? The motive for the attack has not been officially established. The Grundy family retaliation theory has been circulated on social media and addressed publicly by Brittany's father, who rejected it. What the actual motive was, whether connected to a dispute among partygoers, a pre-existing conflict involving specific attendees, or something else entirely, has not been disclosed by investigators. 3. Were the firearms in the pre-party photograph used? The photograph posted to Facebook before the shooting showed 4 firearms at the property. Whether any of those specific weapons were used in the subsequent attack by the assailants or by those inside the party who returned fire has not been publicly established. 4. Were minors among the attackers or the shooters inside? Neighbor Zach Thames raised this question directly in his public comments. The attending crowd included high school seniors and recent graduates, and the age of the assailants is unknown. Whether any of the individuals involved in the exchange of gunfire were under the age of 18 has not been publicly stated. 5. What charges will be brought? Given the absence of arrests as of available reporting, no charging decisions have been made. If and when suspects are identified, they would face exposure to charges including murder, attempted murder, and potentially federal weapons charges, depending on the investigation's findings. The murder of Brittany Marie members on the early morning of May 3, 2026, in Indianapolis, Indiana, is a homicide case with a clearly established set of facts at its core and a set of unanswered questions that define its current status. What is established? Brittany members, 38, was shot in the head at point-blank range by a masked individual who had approached the front door of a short-term rental property where her daughter's after-prom party was being held. She was attempting to deny entry to unknown masked individuals. She was killed for that refusal. 2 others were shot and injured. Approximately 80 to 100 shell casings were recovered at the scene. A Ring camera captured footage of a white vehicle operating in the area during the attack. No arrests have been made. What is not established? The identity of the attackers, the precise motive for the attack, whether the social media post showing weapons at the venue was a contributing factor, and what the something totally different motive referenced by Brittany's father actually refers to. The case sits at the intersection of multiple issues that extend beyond this single incident. The regulation of short-term rental properties used for large social gatherings, the proliferation of firearms at youth events in states with permitless carry laws, the sociology of witness silence in high-violence communities, and the specific history of gang violence and its generational ripple effects in Indianapolis. For Hollis members, those systemic questions are secondary to one concrete need: the identification and prosecution of the person or people who killed his daughter. He has lost 2 children to gun violence in the span of a decade. He was at the party hours before his daughter was killed. He told her to end the night early. She stayed because she was there for her daughter. Brittany Marie members died at the door of her daughter's prom party, doing what a parent does. The investigation into her murder continues. Anyone with information is asked to contact Crime Stoppers of Central Indiana at 317262 TIPS 8477. Saturday, May 2nd, 2026. Evening after prom party begins at 4002 North Park Avenue for Crispus Attucks High School students. Hollis members, Brittany's father, arrives earlier in the evening to drop off food, advises Brittany to shut the party down early. Photograph posted to Facebook from Brittany's account as Brittany Grundy, showing 3 partygoers displaying 4 firearms including 2 semi-automatic rifles with extended magazines, in the driveway in front of prom decorations. Crowd grows throughout the evening, reaching an estimated 100+ attendees. Brittany Members positions herself at the front door to control entry. Sunday, May 3rd, 2026, approximately 12:55 a.m. Masked individuals arrive at the front door of the property and attempt to gain entry. Brittany Members refuses entry. One of the masked individuals fires a point-blank shot to her head. Multiple volleys of gunfire follow. 2 from the attacking group, 1 returned from inside the property. Approximately 80 to 100 shell casings discharged across the scene. Stray bullets penetrate at least 1 neighboring home across the street. IMPD officers respond to 4000 block of North Park Avenue. Brittany Members found shot outside the property, transported to hospital. 2 additional gunshot victims walk into Methodist Hospital. A 4th individual injured while fleeing the property. Sunday, May 3rd, 2026, later morning. Brittany Marie Members pronounced dead at hospital. IMPD Homicide Unit detectives assigned to the case. Lead detective, Christopher Winter. Ring camera footage of white vehicle collected from neighboring property. Scene secured. Shell casings and evidence markers placed across the property. Sunday, May 3rd, 2026. Evening, approximately 24 hours post-shooting. Party planners return to the property and remove the prom decorations. Monday, May 4th, 2026. Marion County Coroner publicly identifies the deceased as 38-year-old Brittany Marie Members. IMPD and city officials activate violence interruption response. Deputy Safety Director Tony Lopez makes public statement regarding retaliation concerns. Fox 59/CBS4 reporting reveals social media photograph of firearms at the property taken hours before the shooting. Week of May 5th to 9th, 2026, Hollis Members, father, gives interview to journalist Russ McQuaid, providing the most detailed first-person account of events. Members rejects the Grundy family retaliation theory publicly. IMPD Chief Tanya Terry makes public remarks on parental involvement. Crime Stoppers of Central Indiana publishes cash reward appeal for information leading to a felony arrest. 317262 TIPS 8477. No arrests announced. Investigation ongoing. Lead Detective Detective Christopher Winter, IMPD Homicide Office. Phone 3173-273-475. Email christopher.winter@indy.gov. Anonymous tip line, Crime Stoppers of Central Indiana. 31726 TIPS 8477. Cash reward available for information leading to a felony arrest.